And we're just going to kick it off because Tammy and I are still recovering from a very exciting, wonderful weekend. So, Greg, take it away. Let's start off with our first day of the week on Monday.
Yeah, so this is the week in review starting on September 13th, and we start with Medical Monday, and it is all about valve disease. And from the Society of Thoracic Surgeons, the human heart has 4 valves, 2 on the left and 2 on the right. Pretty easy to remember. The aortic valve, the main outflow valve from the left heart, is the valve between the heart and the body. And the aortic valve opens when the left ventricle squeezes to pump out blood and closes in between heartbeats to keep blood from going backward into the heart. Aortic valve disease occurs when the aortic valve doesn't work properly. It either fails to close tightly, aortic regurgitation or insufficiency is the terms that is used for that, or it gets too tight, which is aortic stenosis, and it's tough for blood to get through it. To read more detailed information about aortic valve disease, from diagnosis and symptoms to treatment options, you can click the link below. So Karen, yeah, tell me what your thought processes are on valve. I
have no thoughts. I think for me, with my issue, my valve was resuspended. So I got to keep my original valve, and it was just kind of tightened and given a tune-up. And actually, I was told that my valve and my aorta and my heart were repositioned tilting forward. So that might contribute. I was just told that recently, might contribute to why I feel things and hear things differently. So really, our expert here is going to be Tammy today. Go ahead and take it away.
Yes, I just had my aortic valve replaced 5 months ago, and my symptoms were in the list. I was fatigued very easily. That was my biggest thing, was the fatigue. And I know it talks about that you can have the different valves. I do have the tissue valve. I will say that a planned, and Greg told me this, that a planned surgery was much easier to recover from than an unplanned emergency surgery. My first open heart surgery, they did the same thing that Karen, that you talked about. Mine was just kind of tightened up, and it just didn't last. 2 years later, I did need to have it replaced. And mine is tissue, and I'm feeling really great.
That's wonderful. I will say that even though, being part of this organization and working diligently really all year to prepare for September Aortic Disease Awareness Month. And again, the reason why we have it as an entire month is because there is so much information that really you need to share. The aorta is a very long vessel, and there's a lot of things to talk about. So for me, not having had my valve replaced, this is still an educational experience. I still get to utilize Aortic Hope as my own place to receive support and advice and awareness and education. And even though I haven't had it done, I do love reading the information on the Society of Thoracic Surgeons website and anywhere else I can find it to educate myself and provide some questions that I can ask my doctor, because it may be in my future, and I'd rather come fully prepared with a nice arsenal than to at all be caught off guard anymore when it comes to this. So
one of the things that I didn't think about is it is considered a transplant. It's a transplanted organ in your body. Although I don't have to take any medication. If you had your kidney transplant, kidney, lungs, whatever, you are on lifetime medication. I am not on any medication. I do have to be careful, just like anybody else that's had the types of surgery we have had as far as infections go. And I see a lot of questions on our Facebook pages and some of the other social media pages. I can feel my heart a little bit more than I did before. I think that's pretty common.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I would like to add to it in the discussion that Tammy, you touched upon. Often we see people complaining about symptoms of like what they believe is their aneurysm. And a lot of the times it has nothing to do with the aneurysm. It is completely pointing to the valve insufficiency. That's where a lot of the shortness of breath, and certain labored breathing and stuff like that comes from. So I just want to point out that if you're experiencing those symptoms, a lot of the time it's not just, oh, that's characteristic of my aneurysm. There might be a change in what's gone on with how your valve is working.
And you don't have all this, you don't necessarily have to have all those symptoms to bring it up to your doctor. I never had any shortness of breath. I did have a little bit of fluid retention. Like I noticed when I was putting my watch on, when I take my socks off, I could see like an indentation that had not been there before. But I didn't get a cough or anything like that. So you don't have to have all those symptoms that are listed there.
One of the things to note too with an aortic valve issue is, unlike an aneurysm that can grow and never decrease in size unless it's stented or there's a medical intervention, your valve can change, it can improve. It doesn't mean it always will, but it definitely can. So there's typically, depending on age and wear and tear, going to be a degree of regurgitation or possible stenosis. But if you do have regurgitation and your valve is mild to moderate, moderate to severe, and you're having some issues or fluctuations with blood pressure, there is a chance that with getting your blood pressure under control, that your valve can actually tighten back up. And I know it firsthand because it happened to me. Yeah. So that is something that you want to bring up in a conversation with your doctor, and how you can better maintain your blood pressure if that's the culprit.
Fantastic. The last thing I will add is that you'll hear plenty of people say, oh, a doctor detected a small murmur. They don't think that there's any big deal. That murmur, to some extent, that's the sound of the valve, not necessarily working perfectly. In most cases, it might be nothing. There are a lot of people that have heard it for years and then never knew anything, and then all of a sudden in their 40s they discover that they're bicuspid. So that is one thing to keep in mind. If you're hearing from doctors with murmur or this or that, even if they think it's a minor murmur and rather insignificant, it could be a sign of the first steps of your valve showing some insufficiency. But with that, we will move on to Tuesday. And we move to Topic Tuesday. And obviously, it's still Aortic Disease Awareness Month. And the whole point of this is we wanted to share with you pre- and post-surgical suggestions created by you for you. And when it comes to planning a surgery, a lot of thought can go into preparing for that surgery as well as trying to plan for post-op. We are asking you, the community, and you help us create these lists, and you will find this list of pre- and post-surgical suggestions attached. Tammy, we'll start with you. What are some of your suggestions for pre- and post-surgical?
You definitely want to do some mental preparation if you have that luxury. But the biggest thing is to have your home prepared, have some meals prepared, know who's going to help you, who's going to be here for you. I survived with my immediate family, my husband, my mom, my sister, my daughters. But I did prepare my bedroom to stay in my bedroom. I was in there for about 2 weeks. So I had a comfortable chair in there. It was a recliner. I didn't have one of the lift chairs. We had rented one of those the first time, and I didn't find it too comfortable. So this time we had a chair that was an electric chair that I could push the button for the recliner. I didn't have to like yank anything or pull anything. So besides preparing to be in your room for a couple of days with some comfy clothes, a lot of rest, make sure your bathroom is accessible, a raised toilet, those kinds of things. Getting in and out of a bathtub. I had a seat to sit on and slide in. And I always had somebody with me in the bathroom because once that hot water hits you, your blood pressure can change. A lot of recording of the medication I was taking. What did I take? When was I taking my pain medication? And I found it really helpful that only one person be in charge of that. because when too many people started having a say or writing notes, they couldn't understand the other person's notes. It was really important for just one person to take care of that. And I also designated one person that would make phone calls to the doctor so that that doctor knew that voice, that person. But I think one of the things that helped me the most that I don't see a lot on the boards or in list is when you do finally try to lay down on the bed and your chest is all the way open when you're laying down. I took two sheets that they were actually like thin towels and rolled them up and put them on each side of my shoulder to roll my shoulders in. And that just helps so much to take the pressure off of the chest. And that was how I was able to sleep, by rolling my shoulders in instead of feeling that all the way across my chest. And the other thing, the last suggestion I would make is if you feel that you've lost a skill or lost some ability that you had prior to the surgery and you want to try to regain that, if nobody's addressing it, you have to advocate for yourself. So I lost some use of my arm, and there was some real swelling in my arm. The cardiac unit wasn't real concerned about it after they realized it wasn't a deep vein thrombosis. So I thought when I got home, my nurse would address it. She wasn't real concerned. The PT that came out was more concerned in getting me up and moving and up and down steps. So I had to just, make that phone call and really advocate for myself. Or I really don't think I would be where I am today with the use of my arm if I had just accepted, oh, I've had a surgery, this is what happened. So just always advocate for yourself. And that's it.
Fantastic. Karen, what are your suggestions?
There's so many things in this list that it's too long for us to go over each and every one. The community did a fabulous job in helping to put this list together, and every year they add to it as they find their own tricks of the trade. The first thing is any doctor will tell you open heart surgery is going to require at least a year to fully recover. That doesn't mean it's going to take you a year, but set your expectation at a year and then let it go. Stop wondering why you're not feeling better the next day you wake up. You cannot look at recovery in terms of days. Sometimes you can't even look at it in terms of weeks. But I am not a journaler, but I did journal when this happened, and I wrote down how I felt. And then 2 weeks later, I looked back and I realized I didn't feel as bad as I did 2 weeks prior. So that's some of the stuff from once you come home. And I do second what Tammy said about having somebody track your medications, because they're going to be tired and they're not going to remember when they gave you pain meds. And when it comes to pain meds, don't wait until it's too late, because then you're chasing to take the pain off, and you're better off taking it on time, if not a few minutes early, so that you are on top of that pain and you're not uncomfortable. But some of the things that I found really worked in the hospital is don't take anything with you. Just take a charger. You're going to be wearing your hospital gown probably until the day that you leave. But do think and do consider that the clothing you wear in more than likely will be what you wear home. And so you do want something that probably buttons in the front or is easy to slip over your head, because you're going to be uncomfortable to raise your hands over your head. So think about the types of clothing that you wear to the hospital. Obviously, as we said, bring a phone charger. You're not going to be reading a book. This is not an easy surgery. This is going to be one where you are going to sleep as often as you can, and you're going to be walking or sitting in a chair. Walking is your friend. Doing whatever your doctor tells you to do is going to be very important. And the more you walk, the quicker you're going to get the anesthesia out of your system. You're going to bring that circulation back, and you're going to start to come back to living a little bit more of a normal life. Some things that I've experienced while being in the hospital, you might possibly have a drop of potassium. If the hospital wants to give you potassium in an IV, please remember to ask them to push slowly, because not a lot of hospitals think of that. Not a lot of nurses think of this, and potassium is very uncomfortable when it goes through an IV. There's never been a person who says that it's pleasant. It's not pleasant. However, it can be if given over time with a nice large bolus of saline. So it's just something to think about. In talking with that, have a conversation with your doctor about pain management and expectation. Know the plan and how it's going to be handled when you're in the hospital. It doesn't mean it's always going to go that way, because other factors such as a drop in your heart rate could impact you're taking a pain medication. But it's good to have a plan, have expectations. Also, you're going to have a catheter. You're going to have many tubes if you're having open heart surgery. Catheter is one of those. And you don't necessarily end up using the bathroom right away after having that catheter removed. This is going to sound strange, but it is tried and true. If you feel the urge to go to the bathroom to urinate and you're struggling to do so, before you ask to be recathed, bring some Altoids, bring some peppermint. Peppermint is a natural oil and scent that actually produces the urge to go to the bathroom. It's taught to women a lot when they have a C-section after surgery. Nurses will come and drop peppermint oil into the toilet, and then ultimately people end up going to the bathroom. So I've know people who have had prostate surgery and they end up in the same situation, and it works. It works for lots of people. So just a little ding, something to think of when you're packing your very, very, very small bag. Because anything you take to the hospital, you have to carry home with you. And remember, half that time is going to be spent in the ICU, and they're not going to let flowers or gifts or things like that. So tell your loved ones not to send you that kind of stuff to the hospital, because again, it's a lot of stuff for them to have to take home for you. But there's a lot, again, there's so much information in here and questions you can ask. And, are you going to have a PCA, which is a patient controlled device in administering your pain medications? Going home and having a satin pillowcase or satin sheets because it's easier to just kind of slide into your bed. There's some degree of truth behind this. I do agree that it would make sense to rent some furniture if you don't have a recliner or you don't have a chair that helps lift you up, because you're going to get really used to being in that hospital bed, and you will no longer have that hospital bed to help lift you up, and it can be a little troublesome. Sometimes insurance will actually pay for you to have a hospital bed at home, so you might want to look into that ahead of time. If not, you can rent furniture. It's not very expensive, so look into that as well. And honestly, again, this list is so overwhelming and so helpful. I think that's the only few things that came to my mind that I know that's in this list. So have at it, Greg. What do you want to do to wrap that up with all those ideas?
I really have nothing to add other than the fact that you guys pretty much covered the post. So I will talk about the pre-surgical aspect of it. And this really pertains to both our dissectees that might be looking at future repairs, or the intact aneurysm people in our group, or even like we just talked about, someone that knows their valve might need surgery moving down the line. And I want to stress the importance of going to doctors with an extra set of ears. Sometimes when we're hearing stuff as the patient, I know when doctors start specifics or get to the point where it's something scary, I'm kind of zoning out and I miss integral information. And having that extra set of ears is absolutely huge, in my opinion, because you can walk out and actually discuss with each other wait, what exactly was said? Oh, okay, they said that. And I think with that, you have to start coming up with questions and topics specifically to ask your surgeon. And that starts with, how many hours do you think the surgery will last? What exactly is the surgery going to entail as far as the procedure? Am I, is my valve at risk? Can that possibly get involved? How long do you think I will be in the hospital? It'll just give you a better idea of what to expect, because the last thing you want is your loved one sitting in waiting for you to come out of the operating room, and they in their mind had a picture of a 4-hour surgery and it might be an 8, and they're automatically jumping to, there's a problem. So most of the time the doctors have an idea of how long those surgeries might last, and it's good to know that going in. But other than that,
and what you just said, it applies to post. You should definitely have a second set of ears at your first clinical visit, maybe your second and your third, because you are not necessarily going to be completely with it. And if you're underneath of any narcotics at that time, you're not in any position to make decisions or to retain that information. So you need to have your advocate with you to take into that information.
And the last thing I'll add with the because we see a lot of comments about it, and I forgot to mention it. One of the big concerns, and talk to your doctor about it, is what can you expect when you first come to And like you had said, explaining that you're going to probably have a catheter, you're probably still going to be vented. When are they going to extubate you and stuff like that? The chest tubes, all the wires. What can you expect when you come to, and it's still a little bit groggy, and you're still a little bit groggy from the surgery? So with that, we will move on to Wisdom Wednesday. And we were focusing on the many aortic disease support groups that exist both on and off Facebook. And we compiled a list, and it was shared from the community for the community, with our idea of connecting hearts one beat at a time. And we wanted to note that there are groups on Facebook and the web dedicated to the syndromes like Marfan and Ehlers-Danlos and Loeys-Dietz. And while Aortic Hope offers opportunities to participate in live interviews with physicians, surgeons, therapists, lawyers, etc., we have our survivor videos for inspiration and education. We will send out our Hope Mail when you sign up for the packages that will coincide with your aortiversary. We run lots of prizes. We run our virtual support groups online that are done multiple times a month. And we have a lot of sister pages, which are our forums that are set up for more private conversations that are less information based from us, but more private conversations among survivors, caregivers, and in worst case scenarios, a grief forum for those that have lost someone to aortic disease. So you can look at it. A lot of them, in some cases, are just Facebook pages. In some cases, there are, like us, other 501c3 charities that work tirelessly to provide education, research, awareness, support, and hope through the generosity of donations. And the most important thing to understand is there's room for everyone to help. There's ways for people watching us today to get involved and help with these groups spread what their message is. And wherever you go to find that support, we just want you to find the support. And for those of you that are watching us or follow us, we truly appreciate that you are here and that you liked us. And hopefully you follow us and share our information. And by doing that on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, you help so many others find us and receive the same support as you do. And with that, Karen, I will segue over to you about your thoughts about all the wonderful groups.
Not every group is represented in this list. So it's hard to capture every single group, but the bottom line, and to summarize this, is just that there are many groups out there, basically, like you hear a lid for every pot. Typically, when people come onto Facebook, they immediately search survivor of aortic dissection survivor. And there are pages with both of those names. But it also is broken down to aortic dissection for women, pregnancy, African Americans. There's so many different Facebook pages, and the difference is very clear. A Facebook page is just that. It's typically a group where people can give and receive support and share ideas. Your nonprofit charity organizations are very involved in the organization, providing services on a more personal level to the entire community as a whole. So, and those would include Aortic Warriors, which is primarily in the West Coast, Rock from the Heart, which is based out of Minneapolis, and they do a whole different set of what's the word I want to say when you're reaching out? What's that called? When you reach, I can't come up with the word. Come on, it's Pump Ed. Nobody's helping me because none of you can come up with it it either. Community outreach. I knew I would do it. Ding, ding, ding. But they do it in a very, very unique way. Then you have just a bunch of other organizations that really operate on the generosity of donations from individuals within the community, and that's how they're able to provide this more one-on-one service and group-related service. So check it out. See what resonates with you. And there are many people in the same forums, and that's kind of how you start to connect and get to know one another. And what we did there is we listed what sets us apart, what makes us a little unique in our lane. But have a look and see what's on Facebook. But we are more than just a Facebook page. Obviously, we're here on YouTube, Instagram, and on our website as well. And now we're tweeting too. So there's your choices. Those are my thoughts.
Through all the social pages, I've learned a lot, and I've also connected with a lot of people. And this past weekend, I was actually able to meet in person some people that I've only been talking to for 2 years, either privately or on the pages. But I met them all through the pages. But the most important thing that I've learned today is that it's Greg's aortiversary. So happy aortiversary, Greg. We do celebrate.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you. Yes, it's 8 years today. And I'm actually very thankful that for the obviously 8 years, 8 bonus years. And thank you so much for saying, but I want to state that I'm horribly embarrassed that I didn't have an answer for Karen while she was struggling there a little bit, because it's actually my title. It's my title with our organization.
It happens.
My literal title is Director of Community Outreach, and that was what she was looking to pull from.
Here's something worse. Don't lose it, or lose it, because maybe people would find this to be funny. When you just said, I actually have to apologize, I couldn't help Karen, I was thinking, what Karen had a problem? See, bring, there went out. I was already like, what's the next post? You're talking about me. And then I realized it's okay.
Yeah, I should have had an answer for you. I just didn't know where you were going. So
I was trying, I'm like reaching, and then I realized it's community outreach. Yeah.
And as soon as you said it, I'm like, oh, that's not embarrassing at all. It's only my title.
That's okay. I didn't know that you were talking about me when you said Karen. So, it's a wash of embarrassment. Moving on, Gregory, moving on.
Gregory, come on.
Hey, look, Gregory. I live with it every day. My name is Karen, so try to be me.
Yes, but Karen's her name. Gregory's not mine.
Well.
Yeah.
Fun.
Okay, so we move on, and it's Therapeutic Thursday. And with that, we wanted to provide suggestions on ways to manage your mental health after surgery or procedure, post-surgery, how to manage your mood, expectations, and goals. Most people don't stop to think about how they can help themselves feel good emotionally during their recovery. They get kind of pigeonholed into how am I going to physically feel better? But it's important to keep in mind what's going on mentally. And a positive outlook would ultimately be what we would like to see as the norm. And are things going how they're supposed to go? And for some people, that answer is yes. However, depression after cardiac surgery is not only not uncommon, but it's
expected.
It's expected and pretty much the norm to some extent. And it'll vary in degrees. So we will provide a link below that will take you to an article about some of the things and some of the suggestions on how to affect your mental health positively after surgery. And with that, I will go to Tammy. You tell us how you view and how you felt emotionally.
It's truly a balance of pushing yourself, but giving yourself grace. If you don't push yourself, you're not going to regain the skills or the strength that you had and get back to the best that you can be. But that's not going to happen every day, over every second of every day. And there are some days that you just have to say, the most I'm going to do today is get out of bed and walk to the recliner and hope somebody brings me some food, because I don't even feel like deciding what food I'm going to eat today. And, tell people when it's, I would say to my husband a million times, I just want my old life back. And you just have to acknowledge it and move on. I had a really bad day. I guess it was last week. And it just so happened that the same time that I had this bad day, the next day I had to go to cardiac rehab, and I was due for my, it was like a mental health check, and they give you this piece of paper and ask you all these questions, and then they score it according to how you're feeling. And, and I answered it honestly, but I said, I have to tell you, yesterday was a really bad day. I had a lot of memories, a lot of rehashing what happened to me. And I just felt down. And now you're asking me the next day how I'm feeling. So it is what it is. It was yesterday. Today's a new day. I know that sounds all cliche, but if you don't give yourself grace when things aren't going well, you'll never pull yourself out of the hole. And some days it does feel like you're just in quicksand and you're trying to take your step up, and the sand is just coming up over top of you. And the next day will be better. So, and another piece of advice I have is surround yourself with positive people. If you have people around you who are pitying you, not pushing you, not helping you be the best you're going to be, then that's going to be where you're going to level off. I could still be in my bedroom in the recliner with my husband bringing me food, but you have to push yourself and connect with the people on these social pages. It makes a huge difference. So that's my two cents.
Okay, and before I shoot over to Karen, I have one question for you.
Yes.
In relation. You said it, you had the bad day last week. Now, would you say that was still stemming from more of your emergency?
Yes. It just so happened that I had to go back to the hospital that I'd had my emergency surgery in. I had to be back in a room that I had treatments in. I had to have blood work that I was not expecting. I had to deal with needles that I wasn't expecting, and I had to deal with some pain that I wasn't expecting. And so all of that just sent me into a tailspin. And it just so happened, because I wasn't expecting any of that, I had instead of my husband taking off work, I had my mom go with me. My mom's like my designated chauffeur to all these doctor's appointments. And I had her go with me. And she was in the room while I was trying to keep myself together because I didn't want to upset her, as my caregiver. So then we got in the car and I tried to get myself together. She knew I was upset. I was doing that silent tears kind of thing for a 45-minute drive home. So she's trying to drive and hold my hand and try to say the right thing. And I just couldn't wait to get home to, tell my husband how horrible it was, and then make him feel bad that he wasn't there. So I didn't tell him a whole lot. But yeah, so at the end of the night, I also, when I got home, I had this huge feeling of like I had been drugged. Just the mental exhaustion. I just wanted to go to sleep, and I literally did. When I sat down after dinner, we ate dinner as soon as we came in the door. After dinner, I sat down and I was out for like 45 minutes. And when I woke back up, I did feel a little better, like everything had kind of been lifted off of me. But I had to go to bed that night, just like I said, giving myself grace. This was a bad day, a lot of unexpected things, but you got through it and you did it, and now you know what to expect next time. But the caregiver, we talk a lot about it, the caregivers here, I didn't want to burden my mom with any more. She couldn't fix it. She couldn't do it. There wasn't anything she could change. And then I didn't want to make my husband feel bad that he didn't take off work and go with me. Like, he didn't know that was going to happen. But there's a lot of unexpected things that happen on this journey. So, and the next day I did feel better, and I've started my yoga back, and yoga is kind of my release, since I can't run anymore. So you do have to find ways of distraction, what works for you. So there you go.
Fantastic. Karen, your thoughts on the subject?
Before I go into those, I want to ask Tammy, what's your takeaway? What will you do different next time?
I have a lot more questions next time. I assumed a lot. I made pictures in my mind of what was going to happen, and that is not what happened at all. So my takeaway is, next time that there's going to be a procedure or a doctor's visit that I have not already experienced what's going to happen, I will make sure that I ask some questions. I may ask next time that I not have to go into that same room. I didn't need any of the equipment that was in the room. So I don't know why I needed to be in that room. I expected to be in just a regular doctor's office, a patient's room.
That's what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear that you, if needed, would advocate for yourself to say, you know, this room's not going to work for me, and I have PTSD, and I'm not going to do this room. And the goal, hopefully, is that you're not always going to feel that way. That it's not going to matter, because you know rationally nothing's going to happen to you in that room, but the cognitively irrational thoughts just took over too fast. So as long as you recognize that, next time you're going to say, nope, not going in, not having that. You want extra blood work? You can even reschedule. If that's not what you're expecting, I'll do it another day.
One thing I did advocate for myself is I asked before I have to go back again, if they need blood work, I'd like to have the blood work done at the lab that I go to here in my hometown with the person that I know who can do it. And I won't have that anxious, one more layer of anxiousness. So yeah, but ask a lot of questions and advocate for yourself.
So for me, I think the hardest part of the emotional issues and toll that not all of us, but a lot of us take, is there's such a stigma attached to it, and a lack of understanding about the brain. And it's one thing to see a scar from your chest being cracked open, or to know that you had your valve or an aneurysm fixed, or even just that you were diagnosed. But you can't see the brain. So sometimes people don't believe it's real. They're not going to talk to a therapist or a counselor. I'm not going to tell them my feelings. There's a lot more involved in working with psychologists and psychiatrists. And it's not a failure. It's not a weakness. It's helping heal a mind. And a lot of times people will say that when you are overwhelmed with stress and anxiety, crying actually is a way of reducing the inflammation that your brain is sustaining. And your brain goes into a fight or flight mode. It will try to protect what's happening to your body. And then when your body is healing, your brain's like, okay, I need to be healed. Nobody's addressing me. And so it decides to jab you with a nightmare and jab you with some triggers. And I'm not going to let you sleep. And I'm going to make you smell things that don't exist. And so it gets back at you. And this doesn't happen to everybody, but if you're experiencing the symptoms that have been listed and we've talked about in the past ad nauseum, and we've interviewed therapists before who have shared them, then it's time to reach out, because you don't need to suffer. You don't need to be uncomfortable. Just talk to your doctor, initially your cardiologist, your surgeon, your primary care, whomever, and they will put you in the right direction of the appropriate therapist to talk to that can provide you with the relief you need, whether it's temporary or ongoing. But it's really the best way to overcome the symptoms that you're feeling, and to give you a shot at trying to start to feel a little bit better.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, we know that I've been very open about what my struggles have been, especially originally post-op with my dissection. I will say, now this is just my opinion, but having the second repair, with everything that I had learned from what I went through the first one, the second one did not hit me the same way post with depression or anything like that. There was almost an actual feeling of relief that I got to the second one, and it just came out okay. But that's why I asked Tammy the question. It did start to trigger some of those memories that I had from the first emergency, because all of a sudden now the sternal pain or something kicked in, and I was right back to 8 years before. It wasn't so much that what I just went through then, but it triggered back how I felt through the emergency dissection. So that's why I'd asked Tammy the question if she felt like it was about the new surgery, or if it was kind of flashbacking back to what she went through originally as a fly is flying around my head. But other than that, I think the most important thing that you said, Karen, is like, you got to recognize it's going to happen. And unfortunately, there's huge stigmas about mental health and mental illness. And while this is not necessarily mental illness per se, There's a direct cause and trigger to certain stuff. It's the same way, and it's mental health, and it's the most important thing to moving past this and getting back to a life, in my opinion. The physical will happen. It'll take time, but it's going to happen. It's the mental part.
It's interesting because the two of you have had more than one surgery and you have a different perspective from mental health. I've only had one that's aortic related, but I have a lot of other comorbidities. So my mental health issues get triggered by anything health related. So I could stub my toe and then my head goes into a tailspin thinking I'm going to get a blood clot. So it has changed my perspective. Look, it sounds silly, but it is debilitating to live with. Trust me. And it's not hypochondria because there's nothing I ever do that I make up. But what'll happen is now I become so in tune with my body that I start feeling things, pains, situation. So I've learning techniques of breathing, grounding myself, and then I'd say I do a systems check. So I really try to evaluate what am I really feeling here? What is really happening, or what am I feeling as a result of the anxiety? Now my heart's beating faster, my guts are they're grinding. So is that causing the pain that I'm feeling, or was it that I really was feeling pain and now I'm amped up about it? So you don't want to live in my head because it's a lot of people talking, but at least I have taken the tools out of therapy and I do apply them. And the one thing I'll say about therapy is there may be times that you need to go in for a tune-up. So there's nothing wrong. It's just checking back in or actually scheduling to go back in to say, hey, let's revisit some of these theories and techniques because they're not necessarily working now on this. And it's just like getting medication. You're just going in to have another quick checkup and apply something else that you might be able to learn to help you through whatever you're going through.
And I think that's an important thing that you said, because it does not have to be, you were talking about comorbidities and other things. It does not have to be aortic in nature to trigger all these feelings again. Like you said, it can go anything wrong. All of a sudden your knee hurts for no reason. Like, oh my God, is this going to start? What's starting here? What's going to go happen there? Everything, once you experience uh, an event like aortic dissection, seems like it carries so much more gravitas than it might even be. Because like you said, now you're thinking how everything's going to be. I stub my stump because I don't have toes, but I instantaneously at that point think, what is it doing to my BP as I feel my foot throb for the next hour? Like it has a heartbeat. And I know that pain is fueled by BP. So what's going on with my BP? What's going on with this? What's going on with that? And it starts to trigger thoughts and events.
Mm.
So from there, we will move on, because that was a heavy subject, as always, when we talk about mental health, to Feel Good Friday, which is not horribly feel good, but it's still following with the mental health idea. And for the month, we felt, obviously, we just discussed it a little bit, it's so important to talk about mental health well-being. And whether you're post-surgical or in a watch and wait situation, PTSD is very real and can affect any of us at any time. And this is from Active Beat by K. George. According to mental health professionals, post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is a mental condition that results in a series of emotional and physical reactions in individuals who have either witnessed or experienced a traumatic event. Events that cause the individual to fear for personal life and well-being, such as a car collision or other accident, a physical or sexual assault, long-term abuse, torture, a natural disaster. It can be living in a war zone or life-altering experiences like the death of a loved one. These can all spur the following PTSD symptoms: physical pain, flashbacks, depression or anxiety, withdrawal, avoidance, repression, emotional numbing, hyperarousal, irritability, guilt and shame, behavior changes, mood swings, hypervigilance. You can be easily startled. And these symptoms can last longer than 3 months. A lot of people think, oh, it's just temporary, but unless they sometimes are tackled, they don't go away. They can rear their head. in ugly ways. And since we had started, and I started with Tammy the last time, Karen, I'd like to know your thought processes on it.
The same as before. If you're feeling any of these symptoms, it's time to go get it checked out. It's time to talk to somebody. There's no shame in the game. It is just your brain, which is a very important organ, and it needs to be healed, just like anything else. So if you're feeling this, it's time to get it looked at and get it healed.
Yeah, I feel like I've said this before. I feel like the first year for my emergency surgery, I spent the first year recovering physically, and the second part of the year, I recovered mentally and started recognizing the PTSD, acknowledged that I needed help. The big red flag with me, I couldn't make decisions. I just could not make decisions at all. And then that gave me anxiety. It presented very differently after the second surgery. The biggest thing I had to deal with, the first surgery, it moved on to nightmares and all those kinds of things that I was able to address. And I was in a good spot when I had my second surgery. The second surgery, it presented with anxiety to leave the house. And I didn't recognize it at first. I thought that every time I was trying to get myself dressed to go to the next doctor's appointment, and I'm talking about within 2 weeks of the surgery, I would be getting dressed and I would start sweating. I would feel like I was getting hungry, but really it was just my stomach rumbling. I would get shaky. I would start feeling dizzy. And I just thought that it was the pure act and energy of getting dressed to go somewhere. But I started, and that I was going to another doctor, and what is he going to tell me about my recovery? But I started noticing as I recovered, I started noticing that same exact sequence would happen if I was getting ready to go to dinner at my daughter's at three weeks out. And I thought, why is this happening? And then I started it, I've had enough counseling now to try and read myself. And I realized that I truly was afraid to leave my house. And once I acknowledged it and recognized it, it started coming down. But that would have never happened that I would be able to do that on my own if I hadn't had all the counseling ahead of time to be able to recognize what was happening. And it finally went away as I dealt with it. The two things that I rely on right now to keep my PTSD intact and my anxiety intact of what's going to happen next is yoga, and I also use there's several apps out there, but I use my favorite right now is the Calm app, and so those are the two things that I use on a regular basis to address these things. Karen, do you have anything that you use?
TikTok.
Okay, whatever it worked. Yeah, you like escape for a while.
Real Housewives of Anywhere. Yeah, everybody's got their thing. I never was into yoga before. Definitely do not enjoy it at all now. I've had meditated before. I do enjoy that a lot. I tend to do that more in winter because then I can be in my bath, and I like that. No, I'm more tactile. So when I need to really escape, I tend to. People do tapping. I just do a swipe. This is, if you see me doing this, you can stay away for a little while. I'm working my way myself off of a cliff of whatever the emotion is. It's usually typically irritation, but I just, got to get myself down. Since Amy Wagner, LCSWC, has talked often about utilizing your 5 symptoms as a way to help ground you. And those techniques are listed in our website underneath of resources, I believe, or underneath of Therapeutic Thursday, you will find those. But that's just a way of trying to stop yourself in the moment and try to smell something, anything. Try to hear a sound. Search your mouth for a taste. It could be anything stale. It could be whatever the taste is. So you touch, feel something. So whatever you can do to utilize your 5 senses. By the time you get to the second or third, you forgot what your problem was anyway. And that's really the goal of it. They do that through counting. So whether you count in fours, twos, or you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, usually when you count numbers or patterns, you can't get very far before your brain has already turned off the section that was feeling negative feelings, panic, anxiety. And it is just a psychological twist, but it works. So your brain just will stop. So
And the
there's lots
trick
of tools
is
and techniques.
to find something that works for you. Because I went through a lot of different things. People told me to listen to music. Everybody has a suggestion, but just find what works for you and stick with it.
I wholeheartedly agree. I'm sorry, Tammy, that you unfortunately are very similar to me in the sense where that when it affects you physiologically and it becomes really scary. I was fortunate that I was still in the hospital when that really reared its head. So I was able to be completely evaluated and things were able to be ruled out that there was an actual physical issue. And then that's where the psychologist came in and they're like, okay, we're going to have to tackle this emotionally because what you're doing. Just like you said, I would get lightheaded. I was starting to sweat profusely. I would actually go one step forward and actually like go night night for a minute at a time and then come back like nothing happened. Fortunately, I was in a hospital bed. So all it was the head would go down on the pillow and my eyes would close. And then I would wake up a minute later, no idea that just went on, but knowing that it was coming on. And that physiological is very scary, especially for people in our community, because you are already cranked up to like a 10, so to speak, looking for something that changes physically in you. And now when that manifests physiologically and physically, it's a tough one. And that really, you said that you found your way now and deconstructing. It took me a while to do it. But you got to work out of that because it was debilitating stomach cramps for me. And you said that you had it like as a rumbling. Mine was double over in pain, stomach cramping. And when you have an abdominal aneurysm,
that's
in
scary.
addition to everything that went on, all you're thinking about is, oh my God, that just went. But and you start to spiral.
I do want to go back to what I was saying before. If I just accepted those feelings and said, okay, well, this is how it is for me now. I really can't go anyplace. Like, I'm not going to go out to dinner. I'm not going to go visit because it's too, like, you can't do that. But it would be very, very easy to get stuck in that and use that as an excuse and just say, this is too hard. I'm not going anywhere. Because it is work to work through those things. It is work to acknowledge it. It is work to ask yourself the right questions or get the right help. And you don't know what you don't know. I was dumbfounded when I first started seeing a therapist and told her some of my experiences and found out that I had actually disassociated for some time when they told me that I had to have open heart surgery. And I remember things very, very differently and didn't understand that until I started having conversations with my family members who told me one thing and I remembered it a completely different way. I made a very wonderful world for myself in my mind. But yeah, you could just stay in some of those places. It's work to get out of it.
That's the most important thing. It's constantly it's constantly moving, trying to move forward, working the problem. Mm-hmm. Recognizing it and succumbing to it is not the way to go about it. You need to recognize it and then take whatever appropriate steps are for you to move forward from that situation. Tackle the problem. That's what I'm always trying to preach in our community is, yes, you got thrown a curveball. It's this, it's that. Okay, you knew that it could always happen. Now, what's the next step? How do we work the problem? How do we solve the problem? And you'll get to a better place.
Yes.
And that pretty much wraps up all the actual posts for the week. But I will bounce to Karen so that she can talk about the events that took place Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, this was a busy weekend. This was our first opportunity to be able to be part of Aortic Bridge's awareness walk. Now, they've done this, I know they did it in 2019. They may have even done it in 2018. I'm not sure. I know they missed 2020, obviously. New York was a little busy, beating down a virus. But it was really great. I wasn't sure that we knew what to expect, but I'm glad that we were there. We helped hand out all of Aortic Bridge's shirts, and we were able to pass out material about aortic hope, and had a chance to speak with a lot of medical professionals and get a chance to have face to face with a lot of survivors and their family members, and place faces with names. So that was most important. It's always a fun experience for me when someone comes up to me and says, "You don't know me, but I know you. You're Karen. You're that person who did this or the other." And then they tell me their name, and I do recognize their name, from within the community. And then it's also equally fun to think you're meeting one person and you say their name, and it turns out they're not even that person. So that's a fun time too. You learn real quickly, not to guess. So we had a great time. The bridge, I think they lied. I think it's a lot longer than they say. I don't know who measured it, but they were very mistaken. So we started on Brooklyn side, and we marched proudly after talking to the police officers and explaining to them that we were a bunch of harmless open heart surgery survivors, and then they walked away. And we had to walk a long distance to get to the bridge. And by the time we got there, I thought, oh my God, we're not even on the bridge yet. But we got on, walked through the bridge. I did not make it to the sign on the other side that said "Welcome to Manhattan," but a few people did. As soon as I saw dirt, Ben Udelman said, "As soon as you see dirt, turn around." So I saw it. I saw it probably sooner than others, and made my way back. Only it was just very hot. It was really many moments there were no clouds, and so that sun on that concrete, and with the reflection of the cards and the water below, really heated you up. But getting a chance to walk in different groups and meandering back and forth between the signs was very exciting. And then we had another 100 miles to walk to an amazing lunch that was sponsored by Aortic Bridge. This was the first time that I was not just dewy, I sweated. I mean, I was sweating really hard. Everybody was sweating, and I found that personally to be very, very exciting. And that was great. Lunch was great. We felt very comfortable, especially in times of COVID in New York. I don't think this is happening. Maybe in another state, I'm not sure. You must show your vaccination card and identification in order to be inside. So where the air conditioning was. So that was lovely. And then we turned right around, and on Sunday, we got a chance to participate in Think Aorta's global meetup. So there was a representative she was from Spain, correct? Right? She was
Yes.
Spain, because Brazil and, what's the other country begins with a C? Catalonia. That just popped into my head, because those two countries were doing their big launch. So they were partying and having a great time. And, it's a busy weekend, so it was hard to get every representative on, but we were able to include representatives from Rock from the Heart, as well as Aortic Warriors, just to allow them an opportunity to share with the community what they bring to the table and how they think aorta all the time. So that was really great. To share with everybody the things that Think Aorta is doing, how Aortic Hope helps to think about the aorta and promote a sister organization as well. So until next year, we're going to think of ways to help the community as well, whether it be in New York and also in London for the Think Aorta event that they always hold every year. So we're excited, and we're looking forward to other great collaborations in the future with everybody. So that was our weekend. Good stuff. Now we're back to wrapping up the rest of Aortic Disease Awareness Month with some bingo on Wednesday, the 22nd. We also have a live event with Dougherty, Chella, and Keene attorneys that are going to help everybody navigate the disability process. And that's a very big crowd drawer. So we're looking forward to that in the final home stretch, and our final interview with Dr. Stacy Fisher, cardiologist, who will be on hand to answer everybody's questions. So that's what's going on. It was a busy month. I'm a little pooped. I'm a little tired. Well, Tammy, we're both smiling, and we're like, oh, it's nap time. But it's great. It's great to be able to share it with everybody. So yeah.
Yeah, and I would like to say, add one thing on Sunday. for Aortic Hope. We had a
Oh,
nice turnout
yes.
for our for the little meet and greet that I hosted.
Yeah,
We
please
got,
talk about that. I saw everybody popping in, popping out. So how was that this year?
what was that? Oh, okay. Give me 1 second. I'm going to unshare.
Talk about that and also talk about the video. So go through your
Yes.
meetup
So
first because the video is so great.
yes, with help from Josh, who helps produce all the stuff that we put up on YouTube, uh, where he was pretty much the creator of it. We did a "This Is Hope" video, which I don't remember exactly, but it was 40 some odd photos of members of our community, all smiling, their families, and really getting to see what hope looks like post dissection, what life looks like and can look like, because it's a challenge for a lot of people. When it first happens, obviously, we all think everything's going to be so horrible or so like life's done, life's this, life's that. And it might change a little bit, but there's still that joy and the hope of experiencing everything great. And those videos to me, that's what that shows is
Well, in
people.
addition to that, like you, myself, when we came into this community, there was a marketing campaign that was going around about look who you have something in common with. And it was of beloved comedic actor John Ritter, and it was of Albert Einstein and Lucille Ball. And there was another individual in there. I can't remember who the person's name is. And, we accepted that as yes, we have this in common with them. And then we sat there and realized, but do we really, really, what do we have the most in common with? And that's each other. And that's talking every single day about this and about how we can continue to try to thrive and not just survive with this and make sure that our family members are not impacted by this disease as much as possible. So yeah, that video was born out of the idea of this is what hope looks like. And this is what thriving and not just surviving looks like as a community. So it was great to see so many people participate in that.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
I'll
Thank you,
give the
everyone.
shout out to Josh because
Yes,
we
thank you.
went through music after music and went through pictures after pictures to make sure that we had everyone's that had submitted and stuff like that. And we might have
And
missed one. We
yeah,
might
and
have missed one, but we did a pretty good job, I think, getting it all together and having good music for it.
and watching that and seeing people with their pets or their children, family reunions, weddings, births, it's graduations. It's like, God, this is so great. And it's because of our doctors that we're in this position. It's because somebody else was able to recognize the signs and symptoms that they learned in school that have been continuously driven home, and they were able to, take care of us in whatever manner we needed. So and it's also because of the support of our friends and family that we're here and we're able to do the things we do. So I really enjoy that. I love the music, and it was very heartwarming. It was really very good. I liked it.
And then
Tell
after that,
everybody,
we, like I said, we had the meet and greet,
how was that?
which we had a nice little turnout, and we spent a good 2.5 hours talking. There were moments that it kind of turned into like an impromptu support group meeting, but but it was just you could see everybody was happy to see put names, like you said, you had it in person, but in a lot of these cases on the video, they're putting names and faces together that they've seen in the forums and stuff like that. So it's a camaraderie that even through a video screen, you don't feel so alone.
Maybe
And
we
we've
should
done
do those. Maybe we should do that mid-year and not just wait until September.
we could. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's there for us to do. I mean, obviously, it's it's not in the vein of the support groups that we run, but
Mm-hmm.
the same thing. But it's going to always inevitably we're going to turn to topics and talk amongst ourselves. And I think that's the biggest thing is that we can find support with each other. And I think that's where it goes to the idea of us running events that are not necessarily for the world to consume here on YouTube. But like you said, our bingo event, which will be closed and amongst each other ourselves, and we'll see what happens from there.
I
Yeah.
think it's great that you got to do that So we were baking in the sun and you were in the air conditioned privacy and happiness of your own home.
Yeah,
Getting the chance to bring
sitting
people
exactly
together.
where I'm sitting right now.
Right, with the big banner behind you.
Yes, with my big banner behind me. I had to switch out banners after making my appearance for
Right.
with the Think Aorta video. It was a long day. I'm not gonna lie, it was a long day on this computer, but it felt worthwhile, and it
Worth it.
felt like it was the right day to have that sort of long day because it was September 19th. So that
All
pretty
right.
much.
Well, so that's this week. And like we said, we've got another 2 weeks to go of Aortic Disease Awareness Month and information to share with you. So we are back here next Monday again, same time, same place. Same time, same place, different information.
We'll see you all then.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.